Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So excited to welcome you to the Rising Female Entrepreneurship interview series, and would love you to start by introducing yourself. What is your business? How long you've been in your business, and also give us a little bit of background about what you did beforehand.
So my name is Sarah Watt. I run a business called Alt Street Property. Uh, yeah, I started in 2017 in the UK, but it was a side hustle beforehand, and it grew into a business. Prior to setting up my own business, I was an ex-commercial accountant working for a big multinational across Australia and the UK. So I made the jump from corporate to my own business.
So tell us a little bit more about that leap. What made you decide to go on the self-employment journey, starting your business? What was your main drivers and the initial considerations?
Yeah, so I guess it started off as a hobby, to be fair. I was a hobby renovator on the weekends and things like that. It's kind of what we did as we moved around from Sydney to Melbourne to the UK. And our hobby turned into a side hustle when we did move to the UK. And then when children came along, that was the big catalyst for us to start our own business. And by then, our property portfolio kind of took off. And there was quite a few properties in there, in which case I didn't need an agent to look after them anymore and felt I wanted more time with my children. And so that's what our portfolio size got to a certain stage. We had a family, and so it just made a natural leap from corporate to business because I then had enough to sustain me financially and work wise that I didn't need to go back to the corporate job.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. So it sounds like a bit of a mixture of something that started off as a hobby and you really enjoyed and got to a point
Yeah.
where it was a viable business,
Yeah.
and also flexibility and a bit more freedom to spend time with your young children, right? I'm wondering what were your specific goals in terms of that freedom and time with the family? Did you have it in mind, I want to work so many hours and spend the rest of the time with the children, or was it kind of just seeing how it goes?
So for me, it was never kind of a set goal. It kind of moved and evolved over time. And I think it really became very crystal clear when I had my second. When I had my first, I kind of took a really good long 16 months off because I could. And then after that, I got really sick of Peppa Pig very quickly. And then really, it became very obvious that I needed something mentally stimulating that wasn't being a full-time mom. And as much as I loved it, it got to a point where I think having a toddler, she would really benefit from being around and socializing with other toddlers her age. And so I was like, well, I need something to keep going. Can't. Corporate was very long hours, and it was kind of like, what is that middle ground in between? So I actually went back to the corporate world for a few months, for about 20 months actually. Half of that was on mat leave, and the other half was actually working the job, so about a year or so. And yeah, very quickly did I realize that was a nice kind of medium, but longer term, when I have two, that just wasn't going to work anymore. So by then, during my second maternity cover, we expanded the portfolio and the business quite rapidly, and to the point where I was ready when they were calling out towards the end of my second mat leave, they were calling out for voluntary redundancy. I very quickly shut up my hand. I thought it was, I probably wasn't going to go back after the second one. And then there was an incentive, and that was the leap of faith that I took. Took the small amount of redundancy money and plowed that back into the business.
Oh, that's really quite impressive how you scaled it during that time very quickly. And how did you find that balancing, kind of employment, running a business, having small children, and scaling your business so that you could fully, transition yourself out of your employed job?
Yeah, so initially we never started in property because I wanted to leave my job. So in my 20s, I quite liked working, and I kind of liked having, doing this on the side and it being a side hustle. We were doing this for our pension. So it's very much this a very long-term goal. We didn't want money sitting there in stocks and shares. We wanted something we could touch. And so that's how we started it. It wasn't until we came to the UK that we realized that it was a viable business opportunity, mainly because it actually cash flows from day one, whereas in Australia, property doesn't. It's very much a long-term capital growth game, a bit like London. So that was the reason for that. It's just a natural evolution in that business journey. Yeah, I think financially though, I wasn't ready, and definitely my husband was not ready to transition. He actually said to me, until the business makes double your post-tax salary, we're not willing to do that. We need to keep this as a side hustle until we get to that financial goalpost. And then that's when we know that you can actually leave your job and have that flexibility to look after the portfolio full time.
That's really great. And how do you think that having that clarity and having that goal helped you get there?
Yeah, I think initially when I heard it, I was like, ooh, but then I was a bit like, well, game on. But so it kind of pushed me to kind of go, right, we really need to make this work and make this happen. And that's how we kind of moved from single lets to HMOs, because we needed something with more cash flow. It was a financial strategy that was actually quite new to me. But I knew that in order to take the financial pressure off us, we needed cash flow first. Whereas prior to that, we were always about capital growth, always about the long term. It was never about leaving my job. And then kids came along and changed that mindset, I would say. And so when I knew it was possible by doing a bit of property education and training, that's when I realized that it was, or it could be a viable business. And so, yeah, that was the next catalyst there.
Really, really impressive. And did you have any concerns or fears as you were taking that leap of faith, or kind of by then you had enough of certainty that it would work?
Yeah, we did this very slowly. So I'm a very risk adverse person, being an accountant. And so for me, until we were very close to financially viable, it wasn't a risk I was willing to take until our cash flow was certain. And because rent, the business model that we have is almost based like a subscription model. So rent comes in every month regardless. And yes, you've got ebbs and troughs and stuff like that, but ebbs and flows. But for majority of the time, the revenue for your business comes in the form of rent, and that comes in on the first of every month. So because of that steadiness of the business model that we had, I found financially it was a lot easier once we hit that level. That was when I knew I was ready to leave and take that on full time, as well as go on to my second round of maternity leave and then not have to go back to corporate because financially we were already there. So that was more of a targeted goal that we had that I achieved. To be honest, I didn't have to go back after the second time, but felt we weren't quite where we needed to be. And then after the second time, that was when we were like, right, our portfolio has grown big enough. And that's when I knew I wasn't going to go back to corporate because I just couldn't do the hours anymore.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So you say quite risk adverse, and it all had to add up on the spreadsheet and have that
Yes,
safety to go
absolutely.
and launch yourself into it. So tell me, how has that experience been for you in general? Has it been, from what you say, it was just like, okay, here's the plan, we stick to the plan, we do the work, and it all really unfolded the way you wanted it. You had that goal of doubling your income in order to be able to step away, and it was all fine. Has it all been kind of plain sailing for you?
Would definitely say no. We knew roughly what the plan was, but we literally took it step by step. So there was nothing like we need to have X by X. It was more, it will happen as it happens, and I kind of trust the process that it'll happen. So our very first one did okay. It wasn't the best because we were still learning. And then on number 2, 3, and 4, which is HMO number 2, 3, and 4, that's when we really got the gist of it, understood the process a lot better. That's when financially they were more rewarding. And so we learned along the way. It wasn't, whilst it was planned in the medium term, it wasn't set in stone. It was still very flexible, very malleable. And so we just kind of took it. We did a project probably once every 9 months to 12 months or so. And there was a couple that we overlapped with each other as well. So once they were under our belt, we just continued to do projects once a year or so. And that worked really well for us. We've got 6 months of a renovation period, a few months in conveyancing. So you've got this on and off kind of project season, and it worked really well for our family.
That sounds great. So it sounds like you've got a bit of a system going for it, and kind of predicting, knowing where and so on. Is it anything? And you said, you had your first one, you learned your lessons. What were some of the key lessons that you would say you've learned from this?
Some of the lessons I took initially were more tactical based, so how to do things. Eventually, when the portfolio grew, it wasn't so much how to do things, it was who do I need to do things. And I think when I made that mindset shift between how and who, that's when I could really feel like I wasn't self-employed anymore. My team takes care of most things. You know, whether it be my handyman, my lettings manager, my virtual assistant based in the Philippines, they know what to do. I kind of a bit like a conductor of an orchestra, so to speak. So initially, I was doing everything myself. I was picking out the carpet samples. I was doing all of the coordination bits and bobs. Now the team's done so many of them, they know exactly what to do. They know how I think. They can kind of predict things beforehand. So I think it's kind of an evolution. Initially, yes, there was a lot of setting up the process, doing things, getting your hands dirty, and I had no issues with doing that. But once you set up the team and the systems and the process in place, you kind of let them do their job. And so you make the transition from self-employed to being a true business owner once you have those systems in place.
Fantastic. And how did you know when the time was right to go from one to the other?
Again, evolution. I don't think, you get one crunch point and you're like, I can't be answering all these WhatsApps. I can't be answering all these spare room messages. There's got to be an easier way. Let me set up a process, show someone how to do it. Let's trial them on it. And then that's it. That's your task now. So as I had hurdles and issues, spending time instead of the dinner time, I was replying to tenants. I'm like, why am I doing this? It took me a very long time to get over that level of control because I'm a bit of a control freak. I like things done a certain way. And as soon as I let go of that and adapted that business owner mindset, that's when things really transformed and I could really let go and deal with the growth pipeline as opposed to dealing with the operational day-to-day things. So I think one of the most instrumental things for me was constant mentoring, whether or not that be free programs through the NatWest Accelerator, the Santander Business Leaders Mentoring Program, or paid mentoring programs in the property industry specifically. All of that was kind of like added up to that eventual mind change when I got to that size. So that I think was really, really key to have the support of people around me, both industry, in and out of industry, to give me different perspectives on what I need to do to grow my business, to take it to where it is now. 6 years ago when we started this, it definitely was not the case. It was very much, I'm like neck deep in everything operational. Slowly over that time period as we grew, got different mentors and advice along the way. And that's when I was truly able to let go. And I don't think I was fully able to let go until probably October last year when I said goodbye to all of my tenant WhatsApp groups. And I said, it is fully onto you, team. I'm not answering any of that. And it's probably the most liberating experience when that's come full circle.
Wow, I can imagine. And tell me, are there any key insights or breakthroughs that come to mind or advice that you heard along the way that has really shaped you and the approach you've taken?
Loads. I would probably say a lot of this is more mindset than anything else. I think a lot of the time people try and control the how, and initially that's all you kind of focus on. But when you can control the who and not the how, that's where the magic happens.
Tell me more about the who.
So for me, my team was critical. And one of my initial property mentors, I was pregnant, 36 weeks pregnant with my second. And she said, you really need to get some team to help you out because when second baby comes along, you are not going to have the time. And I said to her, oh, I'll have the time. I always make the time. I always work harder. And she's like, no, no, no. The second one is gonna test your limits. Like you're gonna need some sort of help. If you grow, there's no way you can continue the admin and the refurb and this and that and baby and breastfeeding and all that kind of stuff on your own. It's not gonna be worth the ag. If you have someone else that can kind of run at least the admin for you, that will significantly help you on your journey. And she was absolutely right. And that's why it's kind of helpful to have female mentors because they kind of understand the process themselves. And that was the biggest lot of advice that I had. And since then, I went on not a recruiting spree, but started off with my first virtual assistant. I then recruited and upgraded my cleaner to be my lettings manager and taught her different systems and processes along the way. And then just let go of all the handyman stuff where I used to order materials and stuff. I just said, here's the credit card, off you go. And kind of let him do the pickups and things like that. So I didn't have to run around and do all that stuff. When I had my team in place, that's where the magic happened. You have to kind of set the process and let them trust them that they're going to go and do that. And because they've been working for so many years, with me, I had no reason to kind of doubt their ability. I knew that exactly how trustworthy they are and what level of quality of work that they had. So for me, finding the team was absolutely key for me to let go and really have a business and not be in the business. I'm controlling the business, but I'm not doing the day-to-day tasks anymore.
And what I heard there was that having your second baby was also a catalyst for you to let go
Yes.
and actually let go of that control to be able to grow even more as a business. And I'm curious about, that I love what you said about having female mentors to support you on that journey because they truly get it when you are a woman yourself. From the kind of female perspective, what has your experience been? How has that influenced you? How has that impacted, or what conclusions you draw as you look back on that journey as a woman? This is how I did it, or as a woman, because of me being a woman, that this has happened. Has it been, you kind of connected the dots in any ways with your female?
I operate in a very, very male dominated industry. So when I'm on site, it is all men, all construction. Most of the guys that work for me have worked for me for a number of years. So they know how I work and they very much know that I'm the boss when on. So if they want to get paid, they'd be nice to me. I don't really kind of take any BS on site and I can see straight through things. So I ask lots of questions, but I kind of leave them to it. Um, but realistically, if anyone treated me any less than, you're off my side. Like, I just don't want to work with you. And I don't have to. They kind of know that. I don't really have too many issues, to be fair, being female, mainly because I'm Australian. So I very much come with a no BS approach. Like, I'm quite direct in what I want. If I don't like something, I'll say do it again in a nice way. But, I'm not afraid to kind of say, what's that? Like, do you really think that that's up to scratch? And that rarely happens. When you work with good people, you kind of trust them to kind of get on with it. And I don't really have too many issues now and then. The other thing I found really interesting was the admin and the landlording side. I found female only groups. And even today, I find my female only groups really handy in business growth. So it could be business female only networking groups. It could be, I'm part of a network called the Property Sisters, which has got very big landlording and property group just for female developers. So being part of those groups are very, very handy for contacts to figure out what's going on in the industry, any changes coming up, what do I need to be prepared for. I also do a lot of female only networking, mainly because I used to do a lot of mixed networking, and they just didn't really work for me. I feel like maybe not on site, but it was mainly networking where it was a mixed group. Majority in my industry in property, it will be men. You'll be a handful of women in the room, if that. Even though the men had less experience, they talk to you as though you're nothing. And I remember coming to my very first networking event where it was mixed, and I thought, okay, I've done 6 refurbs, might be overseas, but it's the same kind of principle. I've got experience before. I can go in, I feel like I can be part of that conversation. And there were men in there that had done probably one deal or quite new to it, talking to you as though you didn't know what the hell you were talking about. Which was quite interesting. And I still get that today, to be fair. After our multi-million pound portfolio, many, many projects under the belt, I had a newbie telling me how to raise finance. And I thought, that's and so you still kind of get talked down to in some ways, and you kind of know that's just not the person for me. I don't think they're going to make it with that kind of attitude, and kind of move on. So I now know the importance of my time, and I know not to be around the groups that don't serve me, especially in a female-led environment. So I think, if anything, it's not site related or any admin related, although there has been altercations within the operations of the business at time to time, say, for example, with tenants. But realistically, any kind of pushback has really been from general networking, which has been quite surprising. We run a very professional approach, to be fair. We kind of take, especially with tenants, this is where I see it really come into play, because some of them say they've lost their job. They will come to me and go, Sarah, I really need to talk to you. If this was an agency, I couldn't have this frank discussion, but I've lost my job and I kind of need to kind of get out of the contract, but can't. And we'll have a really frank conversation about what's going on in their life. And I think if this was a male landlord or whatever, they would just focus about the finance. They wouldn't really care about the emotional side of what's happened. So a lot of the time we have a lot of female tenants. A lot of them come to me because they've had a really bad landlord experience and they boomerang back. So I've had loads of tenants move away for work. They've come back to Northampton and they said, it doesn't matter where my job is, I know I'm living with you, because that's kind of we know what kind of landlord you are and I wouldn't want. And that's kind of the approach that we take. It's quite I guess, a feminine approach. If this was an agency, they just say, well, computer says no, this is my process, so too bad. And I think having that sort of understanding within business has not only had repeat business for us, but equally our tenants have lived there for years, because of the way that we treat this and having a feminine approach. So I think in some ways it's very beneficial on that side of things, and as well as our deal pipeline. Sometimes we do have a little bit of bravado. We know we're up against builders sometimes when we put in our offers. But, building rapport as a woman also is sometimes beneficial, and I see that more as a superpower than a disadvantage.
That I love that. So it's much more of a compassionate, empathetic approach, much more understanding, but also, yeah, it is proving to be effective because of the repeated business that you get. Looking back, what would you say your key successes or lessons learned have been? If you were starting over again, what would you like to have known, or would you tell your younger self?
My journey, because it's kind of every lesson has shaped where I've got to today. But I think if there was anything, I just would have started the business a lot sooner. I think I went into a commercial accounting career because my parents wanted me to do that. And it was the only kind of opportunity in business that I thought was available to me. So I think if I'd known what I know now, I probably would have ended up being a financial planner or some sort of banker, but I didn't know that that was an option. And so the only thing that kind of worked was accounting. And so whilst I don't regret it, and although I started property at 23, and that might sound really young, I probably would have started entrepreneurship or made the leap a lot sooner. So whilst I don't regret my journey, I've learned every project has taught me something, a different lesson along the way. I would have started the business side of things a lot sooner had I had the guts to basically do things my way. And although I did that in time, it took me 10 years working in corporate for me to make that leap. Yeah, don't regret any of it, but I would have started a lot sooner. Probably do more unformalized training. So we've got formalized training in the way of degrees and do my CPA postgrad, all that kind of stuff. That was fine. I don't use any of that now. All of the stuff on self-development, things to run businesses, all of that soft skill core skill set is what I use every day. It's not the formalized paper of degrees. It's more all of that mindset stuff, the how to build a business and entrepreneurship, things that you can't really learn off a piece of paper. You kind of have to get your, your boots dirty to find out the hard way of what those lessons are. I wish I'd done that a bit sooner. And that would have been my lesson to my younger self.
Love that. And would you say that what's the best way to access those skills, the skills that you say you use every day, rather than the certificates or diplomas that you gain in formal education?
I learnt it through a series of literally quite getting my hands dirty on a project, and also courses that didn't come out with a certificate at the end, if you get what I mean. So property courses, mindset, self-development courses, lots of books, lots of podcasts. That's where I actually learned most of the skills that I use today. A lot of it is sometimes it's a mindset shift of, I was listening to Dan Hill, and sometimes he can be a little bit full on. But he said, don't speak to tenants. And at the time, I'm like, no, I love my tenants. Why would I not want to speak to my tenants and have control over that process? I didn't it wasn't until 3-4 years later, when I had quite a few tenants, that I actually understood what he was talking about. And it sounds really brash, the way that he says, in a very masculine kind of way. But what he was saying was right. It's just how it's said. It comes out very, very rough. And so that's what I feel like a lot of male entrepreneurs, they've achieved great stuff. The theory works. It's just how it comes across. It comes across really like, I don't give a crap about, about that. Whereas my feminine approach is, you have to care about your clients. Otherwise they won't come back to you. And it's having that fine line and balance between that, I think.
Okay, so it's almost like finding your own way of applying that theory or that approach that sits well with you and that feels aligned, gets you kind of the same results, but yeah, just rather than just doing something that someone tells you and feeling very awkward with it, it's actually
Yeah,
finding your own way.
I took a
Yeah.
lot of masterminds, courses, 3-day courses, weekend courses, sometimes over a period of time. I did a mastermind for 2 years. Yeah, lots of books to begin with. I think my very first book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I read when I was 23. And that's what my current husband, my boyfriend at the time, gave me. And at the time, that one book alone made me want to throw my accounting textbooks out the train window. I was like, why on earth am I studying this when I know this is not the way the rich do it? And that was a mindset shift just through a book. So yeah, I think getting into that self-development space a lot earlier also would have helped my journey along a bit faster as well.
That's a money mindset book, the way I see it very much, isn't it? And how have you seen your money mindset develop over the years? And how has that contributed to the financial success that you've experienced?
I think I had to do a lot of undoing is probably the word I would probably say. Because I think when you're 18, you take on the money mindset of your parents. And my parents were very typically boomer style. It was very much work hard, 40 years, same company, you'll do well, la la la. And that just doesn't work in this day and age anymore. I started right smack bang in the middle of the GFC. So I got my first grad job and then everyone started losing their jobs. And I was like, what's going on? I started in 2009. And so very quickly, this whole word of redundancy, which I've never heard before, became this new gizmo term that everyone was using. Oh, everyone's getting made redundant. I was like, what's that? And so very quickly, I realized that money mindset had to change. I adapted their money mindset, burnt out very quickly in my first grad job after doing, working till 2 a.m. in the morning every month end. And I thought, I can't do this for 40 years. And I think at the age of 22, 23, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done working for someone else. Working when I was 24, I asked my boss whether or not I could apply for my honeymoon leave at the time because I was going to get married the next year. I was giving him 15 months notice and he said, no, you can't get married. You need to change your wedding date because I'm not allowing your honeymoon leave. And I thought, but this is 15 months in advance. Like, this isn't like in 5 weeks' time. This is like next year. And he said no. And that was another big catalyst moment for me that made me realize that it's not all about the hours and it's not all about the job, that you're very replaceable. And that's when it started to shift in terms of I need to be in control of my own destiny financially because a company's going to replace you then and there. I also had a work colleague pass away and his desk was filled within a few weeks. And I thought, no company is ever going to give a toss about you after your funeral for all the hours that you worked. Died of a heart attack. And I just thought that job definitely gave him the heart attack. And so all of those little moments in my early 20s made me realize very quickly if you're not in control of your own destiny, financially and your time, what are you really here for? You're working for somebody else. And so that's what really changed my money mindset around having that control, having that flexibility, what to do with your time and control your income. You're not going begging for a pay rise was really important to me. And so I think, yeah, that shifted over time after reading loads and loads of books and podcasts and just doing project by project. Very slowly, we built that business up to what it is today, so that I can have the time freedom now in my mid.
Oh, that's really, really inspiring. Couldn't agree more with that story that of a colleague. Often we attach so much of ourselves and our identity to our jobs and things. And actually when we think about it, if you didn't turn up tomorrow, nothing would change. Like I would even think twice about it. And it is really about taking your destiny in your own hands and shaping that. And part of it is, yes, how do you establish financial security and financial independence for yourself to secure yourself without having to rely on these external factors. And just a final question, really, around the balance of motherhood and running your own business. Any challenges there, any learnings that you want to share?
I am probably not the poster girl for this question. The reason why I say that, I think when I had my second, I had a toddler. I was heavily pregnant. I was doing 2 HMO refurbs. I was thinking to myself, oh my God. I also had a really bad bout of prenatal anxiety when I was pregnant with my second. And then she was born, and I had a newborn strapped to my chest. I had a toddler running around, a really tired husband, and I was picking out carpet samples because 7 weeks we had the next project underway. And I thought, oh, this timing is just really bad. Yeah, I am probably not the poster girl for balancing it well. I think when we were in full grafting stage, it was all systems go. It didn't really matter what happened. If I needed to get a babysitter in because we needed very dangerous stuff on site, we would get the babysitter in, they would look after the girls, and we would go to site, and we were still very hands-on. If we could bring them to site, like when there was no nails and carpet was down and things like that, we would bring them to site. And we would just make it work on weekends or whenever we had to. If I had to bring, I still remember this. I was painting walls. Baby was sleeping in another room. And I had her lying on the floor, and I was painting walls in the other room. I just had to make it happen. Would I go back and do it again? I don't know if I would have grafted that hard, but because that's all I'd known in my 20s and very early years, it was no different to me. Kids kind of just integrate into your schedule. I'm not going to work around a nap schedule or whatever. It's, I need to get this done, so you're going to come with me, and I'm just going to have to adapt site to make it work for baby. So yeah, burning the midnight oil is something I used to do when we were building the business in quite rapid growth mode. That was very normal for me to work immense amount of hours, because when I was in corporate, that's what I used to do anyway. So although I am working hours, I'm now doing it flexibly around nap time or dinner time or bath time or whatever that was. So we didn't have any family around us to help us. It was very much, you pay for care, you pay for babysitting if you need to, but you make it work. And that probably isn't like the posted thing for work-life balance. I definitely did not have work-life balance as I was building the business. I do have work-life balance now. So I think it's very much delayed gratification, where yes, you've gone through the grafting phase, but now you've come out the other side, and I can have afternoon naps, and I can go to my kids' school play and sports days because I can, and I can help volunteer in the PTA or whatever. I now have that, and they don't remember, when they were very, very young, they don't remember us grafting that hard, because that's what they viewed as normal as children, as toddlers. They're like, oh, I'm back up to this house again. But for me, yes, I definitely think I sacrificed some of my mental health and some of my time in order to get this business up and running. But it was all for the long-term game. So I had my battles with work-life balance, but I do have it now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's great, really, really authentic. Actually, there is one more question I wanted to ask you, and that would be around how do you see the current entrepreneurial landscape and how women are shaping it? So, you mentioned you take part in a number of masterminds and courses and so on, and female networking again. And what do you see about how females are navigating the reality of entrepreneurship, and what is it that you are seeing there?
Often when I network around female-only groups, confidence is a real big one that I'm seeing right now. And even though they've got a great business, great small business around their children, all that kind of stuff, I still feel like when females pitch, a lot of the confidence is knocked, or they're not quite sure of themselves, or they don't maintain the eye contact when pitching to a client, or they downplay this is a good one, they downplay their achievements a lot. And I think it's because we're really conscious of that line between confidence and arrogance. Whereas men, they'll come in and basically go, yeah, I've achieved this and I've got that. And I'm like, yeah, I've got a portfolio size W, but I don't come across as that bravado, that male bravado doesn't come across. A lot of the time, especially down in London, they're like, yeah, I've just got, 10 houses in Mayfair. And I'm like, we tend to downplay our achievements a lot, is what I'm seeing. So I think that confidence factor, I wish, could just be notched a little bit. If only everyone was proud of what they do. Maybe it's because they're fearful of it coming across as, oh, I've come across as, find the word for it, just really intense and like, I'm a know-it-all and all that kind of stuff. And I think there needs to be a fine line between having the confidence and backing yourself in those rooms, because I just see a lot of male who are newbies and they've got the confidence, don't know where the heck from. They've done absolutely nothing in their business, yet we've achieved quite a lot, but we always go, oh, it's not that big a deal, just
Yeah.
won a couple of awards. I think if there's anything, I think that's one thing I'm seeing. I wish females would back themselves more and be more confident in their achievement. It doesn't come across as bravado, it doesn't come across as arrogance, which I think a lot of people worry that it's perceived that way.
I'm curious now, you said this, how do you find that balance between not downplaying and also not coming across as arrogant?
Yeah, so it depends on the room that I'm in. So if I know that I'm in a room full of mothers who are small businesses who are starting off, or that they're very much a lifestyle business, I would kind of adapt that. I would come in and go, yep, I'm a mum just like you. I run my own business. I won't mention anything about multi-million. I won't mention anything about our new deals. I won't mention anything. You talk about the struggles of the everyday business. The context and the stuff that you're saying changes depending on the room you're in. If I'm in a room full of men in London, I will not hesitate to say, I also have a multi-million pound portfolio. I have 3 people working for me, and actually come through that way, because it doesn't feel as though it's confrontational and or arrogance, because you're in the same room on the same level as them. So it really depends on who you're talking to. I will adapt who it is. If I got quite a lot of mum friends on the school run. I know their background, they're professional general counsels, they're all sorts, but some of them are also just stay-at-home mums. So when they ask me, what do you do? I'm just a mum like you. I run my own business, and I leave it at that. I don't really go into, I earn more than you, or la la la. I don't go into any of that sort of way with them. I kind of reflect who they are and what they're kind of getting from the question that they're asking, if they do ask me. But most of the time, I'm just a mum like you. I don't say anything more than that. But yeah, in a room full of men, I don't hesitate to, step on the same stage and as somebody else who I know um, achieves the same level as I do.
Yeah, I love that. So it's kind of meeting people where they are, at the same time, really knowing your worth and having that almost internal confidence around it. That's not something that you need to be shouting about, but it's also not something that you have to downplay to fit in.